Welcome, everyone, to episode 255 of the AGEIST Podcast. My name is David Stewart, and with me, as always, is the ever-insightful Margaret May.
Thank you, David. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's fall in New York. Fall in New York, well, yeah. I mean, it's September, right? That's kind of fall, right?
No, first official day of fall, at least the day we're recording. It is the 22nd today, so
All
happy.
right. Yeah, well, my favorite season. Looking forward to. What is your favorite season, Margaret?
I would say fall as well.
Why is that?
I always loved fall. I feel like the leaves don't change the way that they used to.
Mm.
Same gradual change, but it's just the temperature for me. I love soup, getting into soup season.
Soup season. Okay.
Big soup lover. Yeah, I feel like it's still warm enough that you can do stuff. It's still sunny enough. You get some beach days maybe in here. You get some hiking days. It's a nice mix. And it's just so quintessentially New England. I feel like we're
Sure.
one of the places in the U.S. that get a proper 4-seasonal shift, at least where I am on the East Coast.
Absolutely.
Fall might be different for everyone, but for us, it's like we get every ounce of it in its true form over here.
Who's our guest today, Margaret? What are we doing today?
Oh, we got a familiar face. Dr. Chris Renna is joining us today. He is the founder of Lifespan Medicine and a pioneer in functional, regenerative, and preventative health. He is someone who has been working in this longevity space for a really long time, since the 90s. And today he's giving us a much needed masterclass in stem cells. Bit of a confusing topic for some people. He hit us with a lot of information. He talks about what they are, what they aren't, and how they might play a role in extending not just lifespan, but health span.
I'm going to say something that is probably going to give people pause because it's not exactly how they think about stem cells or how they've been conditioned to think about stem cells. All stem cells have in common the ability to do something that no other cells in the body have, and that is to act as a 3D printer for another differentiated cell, a liver cell, a brain cell, a red blood cell. Whatever that cell needs, the different types of stem cells can create that. It can print it.
Yes, Dr. Chris Renna. He's been on the show a few times. It's always amazing with him. I feel like I'm going to like a grad class on whatever he's talking about.
I want to take out a notepad and a pen when he's talking.
Yeah, right? After that conversation, Margaret has 3 must-know stories in health and wellness for us. Right, Margaret?
Oh, I sure do. And I have a bonus actually as well. So The first one, we have a new anti-aging drug. We have a 30-year study that's linking breakfast time to longevity. We have findings that show chronic insomnia could raise dementia risk by roughly 40%. And our bonus piece of news is concerning McDonald's.
How do people in your age group feel about McDonald's?
I feel like it depends who you ask based on where they live. Thing for me personally, maybe just my upbringing, that was like a French fry treat as a kid, like when we were good and went to a doctor's appointment, but it was never considered food in my household.
Right.
First, I feel like it might be like drunk eats for some people, or it's if you're feeling like everything in moderation, including moderation for some other individuals in my demographic, maybe they're like McDonald's is like a fun cheat meal. I feel like it just depends who you ask.
McDonald's in my career as a photographer way back when, I would work for the tobacco companies. I worked for Philip Morris. I'd work for Pharma. The only company I said no to was Mickey D's. Just like I can't go there. Sorry, guys.
I will say as a sponsor, if we're on this topic, a lot of influencers my age, so I'm almost 30, I've seen a lot of them being endorsed by McDonald's and being excited about it. Kind of like similar vein of just like, oh, like McDonald's, fun, drunk, late night food.
Okay. Thank God for those influencers out there in the world. I'm glad they've got a career. Okay. We've got a fun show coming up for you. We're going to have a quick word from our sponsors, and then we're going to get in with Dr. Chris Renna. This episode is brought to you by Berkeley Life, supporting one of the most important molecules for healthy aging, nitric oxide. After 40, your body makes about half as much of it, which can affect your heart, brain, energy, and even sex life. Berkeley Life's 2-a-day formula helps restore nitric oxide levels, like eating a bowl of leafy greens every day. Listeners get 20% off plus 10 free test strips with code AGEIST at berkeleylife.com. I've learned over the years that real wellness begins with one thing: sleep. Not just more sleep, but better sleep. That's where Oslo Sleep Buds come in. They're not just another gadget, they're a science-backed wearable designed to help you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up restored. Ultra comfortable, even for side sleepers with soundscapes designed by sleep scientists, these little things truly make a difference. Right now, through the end of September, you can save $50 on Oslo Sleep Buds and get 1 free year of Calm Sleep Premium. Just use the link in our show notes. The first time I cooked a new Ohana Reserve Aged Cut from Maui Nui venison, I knew I couldn't go back. This isn't just meat. It's wild harvested axis deer from Maui, aged 14 days for that deep, rich flavor that makes you stop mid-bite. No feedlots, no antibiotics, just clean, nutrient-dense venison that feels as good as it tastes. Subscribe now at mauinuivenison.com/aegis and get a free 12-pack of venison jerky sticks with your first order of $79 or more. That's MAUINUI venison.com/aegis. You'll never look at beef the same again. Thanks again for tuning in. Let's give Dr. Chris Renna a call right now. Dr. Chris Renna, I'm so happy to see your face. There's so much we have to talk about today, and we're going to talk about a subject that I personally find terribly confusing: stem cells. Good to see you.
Well, thank you, David. It's always good to see you. I'm glad to be here.
All right, so let's just bust into this. What's a stem cell? And I hear these different words used around them. There's pluripotent. I probably got that wrong. There's, autonomous. I think there's some other words here. Give us a stem cell 101. What are these things?
Sure. So stem cells are a specific type of a differentiated cell. And by differentiated, what I mean is when we are embryos, all of our cells have pluripotency. They could become anything. Physics organizes the embryo into 3 layers that are confusingly referred to as germ layers. Not germs from a standpoint of bacteria, but germs from a standpoint of germination, or layers from which things will be grown. Those 3 layers are the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm, and our different organs and parts of our bodies are derived from those particular tissues. So all of those tissues move from pluripotency into differentiation, into a specific line of work to become a specific organ. And stem cells are not separate from that. They also differentiate from their embryonic state, where they could become any cell, into a single determined cell. And the single determined cells are what you referred to earlier as pluripotent stem cells. They're referred to in science as pluripotent stem cells, or PSCs, but where you read about them, they have a small case I in front. So it's iPSCs, and that usually means it's an induced pluripotent stem cell, but that'll take us into the weeds. So let's stay general for the moment. Another type of stem cell that we have once we're born and persists through adulthood is a mesenchymal stem cell. And the mesenchyma is a certain area of the body. It's tissue, connective tissue, that acts as warehouses for things that they're not necessarily volatile. So if you want to store something that is really active and boisterous and could be set off at any moment, you do that within an organ. So the liver and spleen act as those repositories. But the mesenchyma, or connective tissue, is just like parking spaces in a city. And you can park whatever you got in that space. And in this case, a lot of stem cells are parked in that connective tissue because they may have to start up and go somewhere as soon as an alarm or homing signal is given off by one of the surrounding tissues. So mesenchymal stem cells you hear a lot about. The other type of stem cell that you hear about, and one you hear most about, is umbilical cord stem cells. And umbilical cord stem cells are just that. They're early young stem cells, brand new, basically, that are in the placenta of a newborn and in the umbilical cord of a newborn. And of course, the majority of those umbilical cord stem cells are in that newborn's body and will go on to help that newborn have the lives that we've enjoyed. But that's kind of the breakdown of the different types of stem cells. But, the next inherent question to that is, well, okay, what's the difference between a stem cell and a liver cell, or a stem cell and a red blood cell, or a brain cell, or, any other kind of cell? Stem cells have a job, and Their job varies according to their individual type. A stem cell is from the same family, but one of the stem cells could be a mesenchymal stem cell, and one could be its brother, a fat stem cell, and one could be a sister, a bone marrow stem cell. They're all related stem cells, but they're still, in that same category. And what are the differences? The differences are just like children. They all have a uniqueness and a unique set of talents and abilities. I'm going to say something that is probably going to give people pause because it's not exactly how they think about stem cells or how they've been conditioned to think about stem cells, but it's closer to the reality of a stem cell than it is to what we've naturally come to believe about them. If our natural belief about stem cells is these are amazing cells, they're the God cell in our body because they can do anything, they can derive any tissue, they can become any part of you, and that's what gives them their amazing value. That's not exactly true. All stem cells have in common the ability to do something that no other cells in the body have, and that is to act as a 3D printer for a different type of cell, another differentiated cell, a liver cell, a brain cell, a red blood cell. Whatever that cell needs, the different types of stem cells can create that. It can print it. Now, it has to know what it's being asked to print. So in that way, it's like a 3D printer. It has to be programmed. And when it finishes that print, it can go to neutral and then be reprogrammed to print something else. So stem cells are closer to 3D printers than they are these universal cells, where the second capacity that they have, instead of just making things that other cells need, and I'll explain how this fits into our lives in a moment. Instead of just making things that cells need, many types of stem cells can become that tissue. And it's that we first learned about, that a stem cell sees an injured liver cell and becomes the liver cell. A stem cell sees an injured muscle cell and becomes the muscle cell. That's called differentiation, redifferentiation. Remember I said in the embryo, there's 3 tissues and cells differentiate into ectodermal organs, endodermal and mesodermal organs. Stem cells can become, take the place of that embryonic stem cell and become those other organs. There's a limitation to that, though. Not all stem cells can become all organs. So there's no universality among stem cells. They have classes and categories, and they do have their limitations. Where stem cells play the greatest role, and we're going to talk about aging and longevity, and I'll come back to that in a moment, but where stem cells play their greatest role is they collaborate with your immune system to repair an injured cell. And the goal is to repair the injured cell, to not allow the injured cell to die. And if that's possible, it has to be determined by the immune system in a conversation with the stem cell. So it's a little bit like, God forbid your house catches fire, but it only burns the front bedroom. And the next day, the contractor shows up. He's the immune system cell. And then the insurance guy shows up, and he's the stem cell. And the contractor says, well, I think this is a teardown. And the insurance guy says, no, I think we can repair it. It's like, okay, how do you think we can repair it? And they have this conversation about, can we repair this thing or do we have to tear this thing down? And most of the time, it's a repair job. Most of the time, the injuries are slight and it's a repair job. If you cut your skin, the cells on the margin of each edge of the incision or laceration, they're dead. They're not going to get repaired. And in that case, the immune system takes them out, and the cells that lay behind those become the cells that enter the conversation with the stem cell and the immune system cell to say, are you guys okay? And what do you need? And in that case, the somatic cell says, we need fiber. A blood clot is made up of fiber. And the fiber is then acted upon by the immune system and the stem cell to become a skin cell. And the stem cell either becomes the skin cell or the stem cell supports the fiber to become scar tissue. And the resolution of a laceration is either a little or a lot of scar tissue. And the difference between a little and a lot is often the architecture of the injury, but it's often the ability of the person to heal. People who have low nutrient density diets, they don't sleep well, they're sedentary or they're obese or they're starving. They don't have the stem cell immune system cell capacity to heal that laceration as smoothly and as unnoticeably as other healthy people. So that's how stem cells play the role. And I know I've covered a lot of ground, so I'll pause and let you ask questions that might have been raised while I was talking.
Don't go anywhere. We will be back with Dr. Chris Renna after a quick message from our sponsors. I want to talk to you guys about one of the most overlooked keys to longevity, nitric oxide. It's a molecule your body uses for blood flow, cognition, energy, and even sexual function. The problem? By the time you're 40, your nitric oxide levels drop by about half. That's a big deal. It means your heart, brain, and energy aren't getting the same support they once did. You can boost it naturally with leafy greens, beets, and exercise, but soil depletion, mouthwash, and even common medications can get in the way. That's why I recommend Berkeley Life. Their foundation formula is just 2 capsules a day, delivering the nitrate equivalent of a bowl of leafy greens. Clinical trials show it can lower blood pressure, improve key health markers, and even enhance sexual satisfaction. They've also created a simple 10-second saliva test strip so you can actually measure your nitric oxide levels and track your progress. Our AGEIST listeners get 20% off your first purchase plus 10 free test strips with code AGEIST at berkeleylife.com. That's berkeleylife.com, code AGEIST. One of the things I've learned after talking with thousands of people about health and longevity is that sleep is the foundation. You can eat right, exercise, meditate, but if you're not sleeping deeply, you're starting from behind. That's why I've been using Oslo Sleep Buds. They're not your average earplugs. These are a science-backed sleep wearable that actually helps you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. I love that they're designed for all-night comfort. Even as a side sleeper, I barely notice them. And here's what really impressed me. The audio isn't just white noise. It's engineered by neuroscientists to settle the mind and block out everything, from city noise to a snoring partner. When I wake up after a night with Oslo, I feel more restored, clearer, more optimistic about the day ahead. And I can tell you, at my age, that kind of restorative sleep makes all the difference. Now through the end of September, you can save $50 on Oslo Sleep Buds and get 1 free year of Calm Sleep Premium from the creators of Calm, a new app designed for deeper, personalized sleep support. Just use the link in our show notes to get the offer. Say I got a sunburn when I was 14. I'm sure I did. There would be the stem cells interacting with my immune system saying, hey, we need to take care of the sunburn. Does that impact, say I had, God forbid, I have a heart attack and my heart needs repair? Are these totally different kinds of stem cells? Which I guess goes to my next question is, do you run out of them? Like if I used a lot of them early off, is that going to impact me later?
So in the 2 examples you made, healing a sunburn versus healing a heart attack, they would be very similar. The stem cells would be similar. They would be a little different. Because the stem cell for the skin, which is an ectodermal tissue, is going to have a little different printing capacity than the stem cell for the heart, which comes from a different germ layer. So a little different, but not markedly so. And understanding the system, I think, is really the essence of the beginning to understand the importance of stem cells. Is okay, you have an injury or a breakdown or something wears out. It's either a car crash or a flat tire, but the immune system is called to help. The same cell that calls the immune system sends out a homing signal, and the stem cell comes. If the cell doesn't send the homing signal, the immune system does. So now the 3 cells are in conversation. And the conversation is, how do we fix this? It's a flat tire, it's a car wreck, depending on the damage, how do we fix this? And the immune system helps this program the stem cell to make the repair stuff. There's a repair, or the immune system says, this is a tear down, you got to become this. And then the stem cell says, okay, I'll differentiate into whatever cell this was, the heart cell or the skin cell. You then mentioned, what's the importance of running out of them? The importance of running out of them is that these are the cells that regenerate healthy functional tissue. They either help the healthy functional tissue regain health and function, or they become that tissue that then performs those functions. If you run out of those, you can't regenerate yourself. You can't remain alive. Like, humans have to do that. In the first portion of your life, let's just be generous and say in the first third of your life, you're doing a lot of growing and developing and remodeling. So there's a lot of stem cells that are necessary between birth and 5 that are not necessary between 15 and 20. So your stem cell population gets carved down or reduced during that period of time. By the time you're 30, you're fully differentiated, and you've got about 70% of the stem cells with which you were born. Where'd the other 30% go? They're not needed. There's an overriding principle that has to do with aging that I think your listeners would be very interested in knowing, and I'll come back to it. I'll just leave that as an asterisk for now. But those stem cells are not needed, so they, in very much agreement and support of the whole, they say, okay, we're done, we're out. And they dissolve through a process called apoptosis. But from 30 years old with 70% of your stem cells to 70 years old, you lose about 60 or 65% of those stem cells. So a 70-year-old person is relying upon a workforce to either repair or replace whatever is damaged that they need, that is reduced to 5% of what they had when they were born, or what they had when they were 30. That's probably a more accurate way to say it. That stem cell population becomes very important. And of course, that leads to, your viewers who are staying one step ahead of the conversation are then going to have this thought about, where can I get more stem cells? And that's a good question.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's answer that question. Do I make them? Do they come from some other place? Or do we just give up?
You can make them, but every member of the stem cell community is so valuable to the workings of the operation, to conducting business of the day, that stem cell regeneration by itself is fairly limited. And that's not where the resources are allocated. The resources are allocated to repair and restoration. So the stem cell population contracts. We go from 70% at 30 to 5% at 75. If we had a more robust physiology and we didn't need those stem cells to do all that repair work, I'm sure that we would, replicate more stem cells. More investment would go into regenerating the workforce and not just regenerating the object of the workforce. But we don't. We need them. It's debatable. It depends on what criteria you use to say, when do you age? Do you age from birth? Do you age from puberty? Because that's really the first milestone in differentiation. Or do you age at, after 25 or 30, when you've reached that end point of differentiation and all the stem cells that were there to build you in the first place are gone, and they're not there anymore, so there's not going to be any more construction. Nothing new is going to happen. Everything new is going to be renewed, not new. But I would say that, a serious undertaking of anti-aging strategies, anti-aging behaviors, devices, treatments, procedures becomes unquestionably necessary at the age of 30. The rate at which we age is a combination of our genetics and our lifestyle. And our lifestyle has a big role in that process, because the genetics with which you were born are not the genes that are going to be expressing themselves and maintaining your health and functionality after 30. It's a little bit like having a piano keyboard, and the songs you can play on that piano keyboard up until 30 are going to change, because some of the keys are going to disappear. And you're only going to be able to play different arrangements and different music with that keyboard. And that's differentiation. So what do you do after 30? When I started my practice that focused on prevention of disease, the maintenance of functionality over time, aging is defined as the loss of function over time. It's not wholly chronological. It's functional. And functional means it's physiologic. You can have the same capacities and the same functionality as a 90-year-old at 30 if you're injured. You can have the same capacities at 70 that you had at 30 if you've maintained your health and were genetically gifted. So aging is really a matter of functionality. And my practice was focused on maintaining function over time. The catchline was changing human aging. And that was in the 1990s. In the 1990s, practically speaking, lifestyle was between 90 and 95% of the effect that we could have on the rate we aged. Today, 35 years later, it's about 80%. We now have a 20% knowledge and ability to manipulate our pace of aging and the consequences of aging with regard to the loss of function over time. So if you're going to implement an anti-aging protocol at 30, you need to be sure that the foundation on which you're building this protocol, the 80%, is solid. And that foundation is made up of diet, exercise, sleep, and perspective. And perspective sometimes gets replaced by the word stress, but it's not just stress. Perspective is much broader than stress alone. But stress is a big factor in perspective because stress is an alarm system that keeps going off in the body. And you can imagine if you had an alarm going off outside of your house on the street, or if you had an alarm chronically going off in your house, how aggravating that would be and how irritating and interfering that would be. And that's, what stress does in the body. It sets off inflammation, and inflammation is a universal alarm system. So anti-aging protocols have to be built on a solid foundation of nutrient-dense foods that are eaten according to your, let's just say, immune compatibility. That's a topic for another conversation that we might have someday about immune compatibility being created by the microflora of the intestines. But again, that's a whole other subject. So eating foods that are nutrient-dense. So what does that mean? Guys, it means vegetables. It means organic vegetables whenever possible, farm to table, even better, because they're fresher and locally grown. It means remaining hydrated. It means recognizing and avoiding foods that upset your system. You got to face facts. If every time I eat tomatoes, I get heartburn, I should probably not eat tomatoes. Kind of simple principles like that, but also the overriding principles, which are very difficult. It's very difficult to change our behavior in those ways. The second block is exercise, but that's just because of a mental groove that I have when I first thought these theories and what I studied first. I studied diet first, and I studied exercise physiology second, because sleep science really wasn't very well developed in 1990. William Clement Dement in the 1970s and 80s had made some publications about it, and Stanford had a sleep center. But, very few people knew what REM sleep was in 1990, including me. So sleep seemed to be the third block. Sleep could easily be the first block, but it's definitely the second. So in priority, it should be diet, sleep, exercise, perspective. Exercise is really important, I'm sure, for all the reasons that we think it is, and then even more. And perspective is, again, a talk for another conversation. But again, I'll pause because I've dominated the space for a while.
I want to circle back to my question. So now that we've determined that, at the age of 66, which I am now, and I've had a few injuries and things going on in my life where thankfully my stem cells have behaved quite well, I have less of them. I want more of them. Where do I get them?
Well, you get them from outside sources. And those outside sources come in two forms. You're either going to get them from someone else, which is called allogeneic stem cells. When you go outside the United States to have umbilical cord stem cells, or now when you go to the 2 states in the Union that allow umbilical cord stem cells to be administered to you, Those two states are Florida and Utah right now, and I understand there's legislation being written in 5 to 7 other states which will soon adopt similar policies. And I would expect that Texas is probably the next state to declare, not necessarily because they're the most progressive state in science, but they've spent a lot of money and have a lot of industries, a lot of businesses there that have done a lot of research on stem cells. So I think Texas will be next. But right now, if you go outside the United States, historically, or if you go to Florida or Utah, you can receive umbilical cord stem cells. That's one way to boost your stem cell population, but there's a common misunderstanding about that. If you get umbilical cord stem cells, they're not going to be yours. And so they're not going to understand what your body needs, and they're not going to live. They're going to die. And you know they're going to die. You're taking them not for their abilities, but for their contents. And that's what makes an umbilical cord stem cell so valuable, is because it has rich contents. It has a lot of anti-inflammatory cell parts and, substances. It has a lot of construction messengers and instructions for construction. So you want to go to these places and get 100 million stem cells infused IV. You know they're going to die over the following 2 to 4 weeks. They're going to release their contents, and you're going to feel better and be better, healthier, for a brief period of time. And then that effect is going to wear off, and you're either going to want or have to go back to get that effect again. That's not enhancing your stem cell population. The only way to enhance your stem cell population is to take your stem cells out of your body, repair them to the extent that we can, clone them, but only a certain type of cloning and only a certain amount of cloning, and then give them back to you periodically. A portion of those stem cells, which are called autologous, earlier in our conversation you thought maybe it was called autonomous. No, autologous. Autologous means from you, for you. Those stem cells, autologous stem cells, they can live. And when you get those, they expand the population of stem cells. They don't all live. A good number of them die. But if you have periodic infusions of your own stem cells, over time, your stem cell population will grow and not contract.
I'm so glad we had you on. So these people that I know, I am in Utah currently, there's a clinic down the street, and for a great deal of money, they will give you what now I know to be umbilical stem cells, and you're good for 4 weeks, and then you're back to normal, or you're back to where you were. You spend you spend a lot of money to have 4 weeks. Okay. And the same thing if I go to Sweden or I go to, I don't know, Costa Rica or someplace, the same deal. So what I'm understanding from you is if I want actual repair work done on my body, I need my own cells because they understand the architecture of my body. And the way we do that is we take them out of my body, we make more of them, fix them up a little bit, and send them back in. Did I get that right?
You got it right. There are a few things in there that I would correct. It won't be 4 weeks, it'll be 4 months. Still, it's temporary. And in those 4 months, you will have improvements. There'll be measurable improvements, but those improvements are going to stop and you're going to go back to the same need that you had 4 months ago. So you're going to have to keep revisiting these places. I should tell you that you can only receive those umbilical cord stem cells every 6 months. Getting them earlier than that, you say, I'll just go every 3 months. I'll go every month. And you can't do that. There are some biological barriers to doing that. So you can do that twice a year. And you'll have a better 8 months in terms of healing and repair, but there'll be no ongoing reconstruction, no sort of renewal of the neighborhood. There'll be no gentrification of any of your neighborhoods. It'll just be repairs of the places that you've already got there. That's what we want, is we want to regentrify ourselves. And you can only do that through autologous stem cells. And you're right. Take them out of your body, fix them up, multiply them, and then periodically give them back to you.
I'm sure I have vastly simplified what sounds like a very complex biological thing that you're going to do. So let's do this. So where do you get them from? And then what's the fix-up process? And then I gather you store them for a period of time and then we reintroduce them periodically. Is that right?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
So the richest sources are body fat and bone marrow.
Okay.
And that's generally where we harvest autologous stem cells for this purpose. Now, when I say we, that's a royal we. We don't do this in my clinic at Lifespan. We don't do it because we're not allowed to do it. It's illegal. We do a version of it, but what we're not allowed to do is take bone marrow and fat cells, fix them up, multiply them, and then give them back to you store them and give them back to you over time. We're not allowed to do that. What we're allowed to do is take bone marrow and fat cells out of your body this morning, isolate them without any conditioning or change or improvement or multiplication, and then give them back to you. And we do that in joint injections, and it works very successfully for osteoarthritis and ruptured discs and other types of musculoskeletal illnesses or injuries that would otherwise be treated with surgery or just lived with impairment. We can fix that.
Okay, question. When we talk osteoarthritis, you're very close to my heart. If you were to take my fat cells, bone marrow, stem cells out, you spin them up, you concentrate them down.
Yep.
And then I'm guessing you would inject them near the joint?
Into the joint and the surrounding tissue, because both the joint and the surrounding tissue are weakened and inflamed by that process.
What's to keep them there? Is there a substrate? Is there or do they just disperse? Like, how do we know they're going to work on what we want them to work on and stay there rather than just go through my body?
I think the answer speaks to the beauty of the human body. Remember, those stem cells that are already there, you just don't have enough to get you over your joint problem. But those stem cells that are already there have been called there by a homing signal from the injured cell. The injured cell releases chemicals that says, hey, I need help. And the immune cell says, I'm here, where are the stem cells? And the stem cells are usually there at the same time. So when you get those autologous stem cell infusions, or in this case, joint injection, they're going to stay there because they're firemen and they've just been injected into a fire. So they're going to stay there and try and put the fire out.
Okay. I'm so over my head with this stuff. So I've had, there's PRP, which is spinning down the blood, platelet-rich plasma. That never had any effect on me. And I was told, well, because I'm just like so old, like my whatever is in there's not enough of it.
Yeah, that's a mistaken explanation. PRP is platelet-rich plasma, correct. So what that means is platelets are a specific type of immune system cell that carry specific growth factors and anti-inflammatory factors. And it was noticed in the early 2000s that if you take a sample of peripheral blood, isolate the platelets, concentrate them, and inject them into an area of inflammation, they'll set off an immune reaction. So PRP is going to hurt before it helps.
Yes.
The immune system cells that have already surrounded that joint because it's already inflamed, it's already under duress, those immune system cells are going to kill those platelets because they're not supposed to be inside the joint. A platelet doesn't belong inside the joint. So they're going to release chemicals that kill the platelets, and the platelets are going to dissolve and spill their contents. And the hope of platelet-rich plasma, which does work in certain injuries and circumstances, is that those anti-inflammatory factors and growth factors are going to complete the process of healing. I'm going to say something that's very important now. It's a principle in immunology. Healing proceeds as inflammation recedes. You can think about it in terms of a wildfire. A neighborhood and a forest burn down, and until the fire's out, nothing gets built. And if the fire lasts and lasts and lasts, nothing gets built. And the problem with aging is that inflammation starts originally as a fire, which is a signaling device to, hey, come on in here and fix this, change this. And it just never ends. In fact, you can call aging inflammaging because that's one of the principal drivers of the aging acceleration is inflammation. But getting back to the topic, Jermaine, yeah, we would take your bone marrow, we'd take stem cells from your bone marrow, stem cells from your fat, concentrate them, and we're not allowed to manipulate them. And we have to put them back right away. So same day, we would put them into that joint. And those stem cells would show up and they would look at the immune system and say, wow, you guys look tired. And they would look at the stem cells that are there and say, what, you can't fix this? And it would be like, well, we're still inflamed. Remember, healing seeds as inflammation recedes. So these new stem cells in that area would say, we got to We got to put the fire out. So let's print the stuff necessary to put the fire out. Then once the fire's out, let's print the stuff necessary to rebuild the neighborhood. And that's why bone marrow extract or BDMC and, fat cell extract, that's why it's kind of the, treatment du jour or leading therapy for osteoarthritic joints and tendonitis.
So if I understand this correctly, what we're doing is we're not making more stem cells. We're just taking the ones that we have from one area, concentrating them, and sending them in to put the fire out.
Yes, that's correct. We're deploying stem cells for your body. Your body, for the overriding reason I said I asterisked earlier and I still haven't gone to, but your body doesn't have the resources necessary to deploy enough stem cells to put the fire out in your knee.
Right.
That's a slow burn and your body's living with it. And it's going to continue living with it. But if we redeploy those stem cells, we take them, we say, hey, you guys are in the barracks here,
Right.
Wake up. Let's take these bone marrow fat stem cells, put them in this joint, going to solve the problem. Great. Then you get a much better result. Then inflammation recedes and healing proceeds.
Is this, when we talk about this, is this stem cell reloading? Is that the same as redeploying?
Yeah. So in this case, it's redeploying. In the case that we talked about earlier, which you can now do in Florida and, well, let's just talk about going outside the United States because there are stem cell clinics very close adjacent to the United States that do this. The primary clinic with which I'm familiar that does this is in Costa Rica, in the capital of Costa Rica. And you can go there to this clinic and you can have your stem cells extracted from bone marrow, fat, and also blood. So they take stem cells from 3 compartments. They repair those stem cells through a process that was originally determined in the Ivy League universities, Harvard and Yale, figured out how do you repair a person's stem cells to prepare them to go back into the body and do a better job. So you can roll back the clock on some of the inherent damage that has been done to stem cell by living for fun for 66 years. You can roll that back. Then you can amplify them. And amplifying them is called passing. And it's been very well documented that after 4 amplifications or 4 passes, you begin to get weaker and weaker cells. So if you're going to go abroad and you're going to have this procedure done, one of the things you want to know is how many passes are you going to put these cells through? All right, that was a digression. So you want to go abroad, have your stem cells taken out, reconditioned to a younger level of functionality, a greater level of functionality, amplified 4 times, frozen, and then periodically segments or portions of them thawed and given back to you. And that's reloading. That's not redeploying. That's reloading.
I'm not familiar with this exact technology, but what I'm hearing from you is that, well, let's talk about percentages. So I'm just going to make this up because I've had a lot of injuries in my life. I'm going to say I got 5% of them left.
Yeah.
So if we do this, if I go down Costa Rica, they do 4 passes and they put these back into me, how many more am I going to get? Am I going to go from 5 to 6 or am I going to go 5 to 10? And how useful are these? Because we talked about there are different kinds and they have sort of different things that they fix. So is it across all things they fix or is it just they're sort of targeted, like if they take it from my fat, they only fix my fat or?
Working backward. They're not targeted.
Okay.
They are different types of stem cells, so I won't call them pluripotent because that speaks to a specific type of cell, but they have multipotencies.
Mm.
Those cells from those 3 sample tissues, bone marrow, blood, and fat, are comprised of many, many different families of stem cells that have a lot of potential. So they're multipotent cells. Then working backwards to the other questions is what percent is going to grow? So let's just take a hypothetical situation, said that you went to Costa Rica twice a year, have your stem cells extracted and cloned, and you receive 100 million stem cells twice a year for the next 5 years. I'm now beyond my knowledge, and I'm totally speculating. Everything else I've said so far is substantiated in medical literature, and now I'm just speculating. That I think that if you did that for 5 years, you would probably increase your endogenous stem cell population by single-digit percents each year. So you might get to an 8% or 10% stem cell population again. You're basically giving yourself your own guys, and your own guys speak your language. Your own guys came from the needs that you were once able to fulfill, and you're going to fulfill their needs again. So, they're going to age right alongside their endogenous brethren, but they're not going to age any faster than their endogenous brethren, and they're going to come back to a 66-year-old David and stand next to a 66-year-old stem cell brother, and they're going to have been reconditioned to a 46-year-old capacity. They're going to have greater capacity than the ones you already have. And what I thought you were going to say is, this sounds like something we should do.
Well, yeah. This is the first I've learned of this, but this sounds to me like sort of the closest thing I've heard towards some sort of a fountain of youth. Like what I'm hearing you saying is this is de-aging.
Yeah, this is reversing aging. I wouldn't put it in the fountain of youth category quite yet. I would say that the fountain of youth was a little bit of a mirage. There are probably 8 or 10 fountains of youth. So it's going to have to be a whole city of fountains. It's going to have to be a group effort. But there's definitely youth to be had. There's definitely youth to be had. I know that your listeners are going to be thinking about it in their own particular way. Is it possible that my children will have the abilities that I had when I was 40 years old when they are 80 years old? If your children are in their 20s or 30s, it's not only possible, it's likely. And there are lots of reasons why it's likely. Not only advances in science and technology, and not only the threshold we're on, those two, very intriguing letters, AI, and the impact that's going to have on this science and all science at large, but it's also economically driven. We want to not only live longer, but we want to live better so that we can be more productive. And what you see, if you look at your grandparents or parents, respective of your individual age, if you look at them, they're not consuming at the same rate that they were consuming when they were in their 30s and 40s. And our whole Western world system is built on productivity and consumption. So the natural external forces are not only going to fund this, but they're going to completely support this because it's necessary to support the system to which we all become accustomed. It favors capitalism.
I've spoken to Andrew Scott, who's Oxford Economics, and he told me the stat is for every year that a population works healthily after 60. So you just go from like 65 to 66. I want to say you increase GDP 4%. Which is just like an astronomical number. So then I guess if we're talking about economics, for those that are inclined to go to Costa Rica and have this done, what does that cost?
Yeah, well, that's one of the problems. I mean, one of the problems is the fact you got to go to Costa Rica.
Right.
Like, if you live in Fort Lauderdale, why can't you go to Boca Raton or Miami?
Right.
And it looks like we're awakening to those realities and are getting closer to solving those problems with this new legislation that's been written, and also the correction of the misunderstandings that generated the first legislation. The next thing is cost, and the democratization of medical technology is usually controlled and driven by major businesses. So big pharma is not yet in the stem cell market, but it won't be long. And those companies I alluded to with headquarters in Houston, Austin, and Dallas, they're right on the threshold. They're saying, hey, we're either going to do it on our own or you guys are going to come and buy us. What's it going to be? And I would imagine, I don't know enough about business to really make this prediction, but I would imagine that one of the two is going to happen. And so, we're in this prime period of development, rich development of stem cell technologies and accessibility over the next 10 years. To answer your question, again, I don't know exactly, but if you go to Costa Rica to have that process done now, it's probably going to cost you anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, which rules out the vast majority of people. And even a lot of people who would do it, but they have different views of the utilization of that money.
Mhm.
A lot of people your age would have the money to do it, but they wouldn't do it because they would think, well, I have to save that money for my grandchildren.
Mhm.
I'll pay for it for my son. My son won't be able to pay for it, so I'll pay for it for him. It's that self-sacrificial thing that comes from parenthood and taking responsibility for the decisions you made to have children in the first place. Generally, that has a stronger influence.
I've heard a lot of, I don't want to use the crazy, unusual stem cell stories out there. You know so much about this. This is your world.
Yeah.
You must hear a lot of things that upset you about stem cells that just aren't true.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I hear things that upset me. I understand how you can misunderstand the information. And I also understand that there's no real place. I mean, if a person wants to know about stem cells, they go to the internet. They won't ask their family doctor or their internal medicine specialist or their gynecologist. They're not going to ask those people because they don't think that's what they do. And they're right. That's not what they do. Doctors are trained to name that disease and know that therapeutic. And they're also conditioned to believe that if they name the disease correctly and they know the therapeutic and it's the right one or the right ones, then the choice of the therapeutic option is either given to the patient. If they do it, they do it. If they don't do it, it's not my fault. I'm done. Meaning, doctors are so well trained nowadays in terms of disease recognition and therapeutic options. Probably takes them 3 to 5 minutes to do that. And of course, the economics of a medical practice is get better and better if it only takes you 3 to 5 minutes. And that may be why your doctor's not spending more than 15 or 20 minutes with you when you go in for the visit. It's because they kind of figured it out in the first 5 minutes. And whatever they're doing for the next 10 minutes is just there to either reconfirm their ideas or to help you feel better about it. In any case, that's not what they do. Doctors are not trained to know about leading edge therapies for the preservation of function over time, wellness, and longevity. They don't know. You have to have a bespoke education in this stuff. So what bothers me about stem cells is just the kind of misunderstandings that surround them. And also, the thing we ignore is the 80%. The thing we ignore is I'm going to listen to this podcast on stem cell rejuvenation, but first I got to drive through Jack in the Box and get a taco.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, great. And I'm not knocking Jack in the Box or their tacos. I'm just saying that that's a combination processed food. It's not a nutrient-dense food. You have no idea how old that food is. We all know that doesn't, the fast food diet or the convenience diet that also helps us become productive and efficient in the use of our time is just not a good foundation to build health.
More from Dr. Chris coming up after this final message. We talk a lot about what goes into our food, but rarely do we think about where it comes from, how the animal lived, what it ate, whether it ever saw the sun. The first time I cooked Maui Nui's Ohana Reserve venison, I could taste the difference. This was meat that lived well and free, and it shows. Remember, no stress, no hormones, just clean, nutrient-dense, unbelievably tender wild venison aged for 14 days. What's more, you feel better after eating it. That's not hype. It's 22 grams of protein per 100 calories and a freedom you can taste. But this isn't in stores. It's subscription only. The Ohana Reserve box gives you 3 premium aged cuts, ground venison, and jerky sticks delivered frozen right to your door. Go to mauinuivenison.com/ageist and grab your box before subscriptions fill. And get this, they are throwing in a free 12-pack of jerky sticks with your first order of $79 or more. That's MAUINUI venison.com/ageist. Once you've tried this, nothing else measures up. We're coming to a close here, and I just want to ask you, stem cell reloading, is that the correct terminology? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Taking
Stem
my
cell
own,
reloading, right. Stem cell rejuvenation, regeneration.
like if we get that right and it becomes
Democratized.
democratized, that's the word I want. Yes, if we democratize cell reloading, what do you feel human aging will look like in, say, 2050?
There'll be a separation about our beliefs and expectations with regard to how old we are and what we're capable of doing. will there be 75-year-old gold medal winners at the Olympics in 2050? Yeah. They may not be, competing in wrestling, but they're sure going to shoot just as well or better than anybody else can hit the target. They're going to have, older people are going to have much greater capabilities. And much greater capabilities are deceiving because we still haven't happened upon the therapies that change the way we look. So we still look like an old guy. And it surprises everybody when we make a shot from half court, especially if we make the shot from half court and we run to the basket and catch the rebound. Like, that guy was amazing. Did you see what he just did? And you don't expect that because you look at the guy and think, oh, wait till you see this. Well, fortunately, we're going to look different too. Fortunately, we're going to be able to renew, regenerate, repair, sustain all of those tissues that are necessary for us to look like our younger selves.
Amazing. This has been so educational. I now feel like I can talk about stem cells with some education and understand the differences there. And this, the stories I hear about, I went to Tijuana and I got whatever. Well, now I know what that whatever is.
Yeah, or what it might have been.
Or what it might have been at one point.
Yeah. I have information that might help a lot of people, and it might even help some of the people who are taking care of those others. And I'm always willing to share that information because, hey, I can't take care of them all. And there's lots of people out there, and they need lots of us. Let me invite myself back for part 2 and talking about these stem cells, because we just did a really good job of Stem Cell 101. And it's really exciting to talk about Stem Cell 102. I'm going to leave you with an acronym that'll tantalize you for the next conversation if we have one. It's called MUSE, M-U-S-E. And of course, we all know what the word muse means, and we all associate it with when we first read stories about it and the Greek gods and literature and all that. MUSE are multi-lineage differentiated stress-enduring cells. So it's multi-MU. Lineage doesn't get a roll, doesn't get a letter. Stress-enduring, M-U-S-E, cells. And you know what? Multi-lineage stress-enduring cells sound really interesting. They're stem cells. Thanks, Dave.
I can't wait for part 2. Dr. Chris Renna, Lifespan Medicine, you are my teacher. I value these conversations, and I know my audience does. It is always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Like I mentioned at the top, every time we have Dr. Chris Renna on, I want to take out a pen and a notepad because I feel like he is giving a full masterclass in whatever topic he's educating us on. And he does such a wonderful job of using metaphor. Even though he's throwing so much information at us at once, I immediately, when he said stem cells are 3D printers, I was like, I get it. I understand where you're going with this, all the kind of misconceptions I have. I feel like I was able to put those to the side and fully kind of sink into how he was breaking down stem cells for us. I'm still a little bit fuzzy on certain things, but understanding them as printing what the body needs when it needs it, I think is a really good place to start for people who are a little confused about stem cells. Did you go into this with any misconceptions?
I have this endless knee issue. And before I had surgery, I spoke to a number of these clinics who were like, oh, yeah, we can regrow your knee. And I said, gosh, that's just wonderful. You've done this before. And they would say, oh, yeah, we do it all the time. Okay, great. Show me some before and after MRIs. Oh, but that's not really what we go by. It's like, okay, conversation over. Thank you so much. What Chris was talking about was super interesting, that getting somebody else's stem cells, okay, well, maybe if you feel good for a few weeks, but it's not really going to do that kind of thing. What you need is to repropagate your own stem cells. And my understanding from that conversation was that the FDA does not allow that currently in the US. You have to go other places. So they take the stem cells out of your fat or your bone, and then they scale them up in a petri dish and inject them at scale into your body. That sounds very interesting and quite promising to me. And who knows? We have, Mr. RFK out there. Okay, so I'm going to start on the positive with RFK because there's a very good chance he will change this regulation about stem cells. and allow more of this. And that will probably count in the positive column of things that he's done. He's got a lot of offset to do in his negative column, though. He seems a little overmatched for the position, but I still can't get over the dead baby bear thing. It's still like, come on, buddy. That's weird. Anyway, let's
Yeah, stem cells, I always going into this, I remember a couple years ago, it was a very hot button political issue. There
right,
was a lot of controversy
right,
around it in terms of, again, like in the same vein, like what constitutes life? Like, should we be using stem cells? Yada, yada,
right.
yada. And I remember from that kind of time period, the idea that Dr. Chris was bringing up in terms of like cloning your own stem cells, but like you can't clone them too much. And like there's very clear
Right,
parameters of how that works. But
right,
then the other thing that came to mind when he was talking about the umbilical cells, like he was mentioning like using someone else's and how that
right.
has a short lasting effect, like you were saying, but that there are like stem cell banks where when babies are born, you can then take your
Mm,
kid
right.
umbilical stem cells and bank them away in case they should need them in the future if there is like for surgery purposes, like something horrendous happens. It is similar to like when women will freeze their eggs and put them in a egg bank. They have the stem cell
Mm,
bank for your own stem cells, which I wonder like if we're talking about this idea of stem cells and their promise in longevity science, if that's going to become something if we have regulations in the US that are passed for that, another sect that starts to become more popular, people start banking their stem cells for their kids with this idea of longevity science in the future. I'm curious if that is a path that we would be going in a train of thought.
I'm sure it's happening already. This is going to be based on economics, and I think that
Yeah.
increasingly what we're seeing here is a correlation between income and lifespan,
Hmm.
and barring some change in direction the way things are going, I think those things are going to continue to run parallel. I'm virtually certain that, they're fancy Swiss families that are storing, their kids' stem cells somewhere in case they need them. If what you're interested in is the propagation of your family and your family values, passing down money, okay, that's one way to ensure that. Another way is like make sure your kids live a long time, so save their stem cells. So
Yeah, it'll be interesting to
we'll
see
see.
how that all what the future holds in regards to how that stem cell science is evolving and the regulations around it. But like Dr. Chris was saying, the things that we can do, right? He was saying diet, sleep, exercise,
Yeah, yeah, that's
active, and those have a big impact on our stem cells and how the ones that we have, how they're working.
that's right. That's right. Margaret, I hear you got some stories for us.
I come to you as kind of a blank slate, bringing these
Oh,
questions.
we've all got our prejudices, Margaret. Come on, own up to it.
So our first one, anything that says anti-aging, I'm always curious to see what your thoughts are. I feel like it's always a fun topic of discussion. So this startup anti-aging pill aims to revive autophagy and reverse cognitive decline. So Business Insider reported that Retro Biosciences, so Sam Altman-backed company, has announced their first clinical trial for RTR242. It's an experimental anti-aging drug in Australia, and the goal is to revive your body's cellular cleanup crew to help it reverse toxic protein accumulation in the brain and counter Alzheimer's disease, among a possible broader aging effects. Have you heard of this?
Point of correction: autophagy.
Autophagy. Sometimes when you see it in print, your brain assumes a pronunciation. Thank you very much. Autophagy.
I mean, this is sort of interesting. Autophagy is essentially recycling dead zombie cells, bringing the proteins back, keeping them from misbehaving, so to speak.
Yep.
I'm glad that, newly minted billionaire Sam Altman is doing something useful with his money. That's great. You just don't know about these things until you test them, and testing them takes a lot of money. So thanks, Sam. Test this, test more. Sounds great.
Yeah, whenever I see these, I'm always just like the risk versus reward of like the goal of these drugs,
There's
right?
that
Like
too.
you could be resetting aging or slowing it, but like again, like you're saying, by the time that we get the kind of human data from
Yeah.
clinical studies, it's going to be a while to do that. So following it to see like effects in your lifetime. You probably won't have the data at that point to use it, but who knows?
Sam's got access to some AI, so we'll see.
The second one was very much of interest to me, though, because there's long been this conversation around meal timing.
Oh, yeah.
So breakfast timing, there was a study that showed it was linked to longevity. It was a 30-year study. The Economic Times shared that this long-term study of 3,000 adults over 30 years suggested that delaying breakfast by even 1 hour from like your wake-up time is correlated with shorter lifespans. So specifically, the researchers found that later breakfasts are linked to higher mortality and conditions like depression, fatigue, oral health issues. But this study is a part of a larger growing field of chrononutrition. The time that you eat matters.
I think that all this chrono stuff is hugely impactful because not only does like what we think of our physiology have a clock, and it's a very clearly prescribed clock, and you want to keep it regular. So that's for your sleep, but also your eating. And one of the reasons for this is I recently learned it's all your gut bugs, all your microbiota, they also live on a clock. So if you disrupt them, and this is one of the things about jet lag. One of the contributing factors to jet lag is not just your sleep and the light, but it's the food part. So, all your gut buddies are like, whoa, like it's 2 a.m. and you're like shoving this food at us. What are you doing to us? I talked to a few people who are experts on this idea of circadian rhythm and how it functions throughout the body. And one of the things I think it was Dr. Sanjay Panda told me, he's at the Salk Institute. If I recall properly, what he was saying was you will never find a firefighter, a cop, an airplane pilot, somebody who's like has a lot of chrono disruption across their lives. They don't live as long as other people. And I think this is part of it. So this idea that we are these malleable critters and we can just adapt without consequences. No, we're kind of sensitive, Margaret. We're just kind of
Likes routine. We're resilient, but we do like routine.
we're all little snowflakes, and we just can't. Yeah. Anyway,
What really struck me about this is I think it's all well and good to think that like a shift in eating time could be something that we can adapt to see some positive health effects, like whether that's like blood sugar regulation. You were just talking about your gut microbiome. Your gut microbiome, I always think of it's like a pet. Like how people have like sourdough starters, they think of it as a pet.
Yeah,
like you
great.
have a bunch of pets, and they're like they like routine. They're like, we eat at this time, we have this job at this time. But if we have jobs, right, that kind of work against that schedule, or like just in our modern world, our bodies can adapt to that. But
yeah, I think there's other elements to this too beyond the chrono element that I guess is sort of related. So, when you wake up, your cortisol goes up, which is good. Like everybody thinks, oh, cortisol bad. No, cortisol is actually kind of a good thing.
your body needs a little bit of stress.
So that's like you wake up and everything's like zoom, game on. And that may not be the best moment for rest and digest and with your food. I don't know. I'm not I don't have no expertise in this, but that's might also be an element of this.
Yeah, I think it's all a delicate dance, right?
Delicate flower, right, Margaret? It's like a delicate flower garden. We do the gardening with our delicate flowers. Yes, that's it.
Our last one, well, not our last one, because I have that bonus one I was teasing, but this third one, chronic insomnia could raise dementia risk by around 40%. So this one was one of the headlines on Science Daily that stopped me. And it was findings from a large Mayo Clinic study, which found that long-term insomnia isn't just annoying, it may actually accelerate brain aging.
Oh, yeah.
Increase your risk of dementia, cognitive
100%.
impairment by roughly 40%. So the brain imaging from the study showed structural and functional changes. Again, all the more reason why your sleep is so important. It's your body's time to repair itself. It's when your brain, what is it? It's your starts with a G, the system of your brain.
Glyphalic system. It's sort of the sewage system for your brain.
Yep, it's like your lymphatic system for your brain. It cleans itself during sleep. You need to get sleep. And if your sleep's disrupted, that definitely has a compounding effect. And the study was showing that.
So do you find that true from all the raves that you go to?
Me? Yes, I'm raving constantly. I always used to joke with my friends. I feel like I am an 84-year-old woman.
Oh.
I like to be home. I like to do my board games and cook and sleep. Even in college, I was kind of like, "You're going out again? Like, isn't this getting boring? You don't wanna stay home and do a
Mm.
puzzle?" I love a good party. I love a good
Wild times at the Margaret household. Watch out.
I love a good party. I love a good late night. I used to work at a bar, so, like, I was up. I've done that. It's fun, everything in moderation. My body from a young age dealing with, like, health issues, I've learned, like, I need to when my body says it's tired or needs to do this, like, I need to listen. So,
Yeah.
this study didn't need to convince me that sleep was important.
What's this about McDonald's? What's going on with these guys?
Let's talk about McDonald's. So I was seeing this all over social media, all over news outlets. I feel like, again, when bringing it back to RFK, everyone's talking about how he's going to revamp the food system. Seeing this headline just kind of rolled into that. So last week, McDonald's said it plans to invest $200 million over the next 7 years to promote regenerative agricultural practices on cattle ranches. They were doing this with potato farms, I believe, a while ago, or they pledged saying they were going to do this. But this announcement is shared across, it's a part of a growing trend. Other big companies like General Mills, Nestle, Walmart, PepsiCo, all those big guys, they've also been implementing or saying they're going to invest in regenerative farming projects in the coming years and in recent years. I feel like this is just an interesting one to throw out there. Did you hear about this or?
Actually, I haven't. 200 million, 7 years, so that's a little less than $30 million a year. I'm just going to spitball. Mickey D's is probably a $20 billion company, maybe 50. So like whatever, this is nothing. This is like less than a rounding error. I would be very curious what they mean by promote regenerative agriculture.
Yes.
Like, what does that mean? They're going to send out some emails to ranchers and say, like, we think you should do this? Or
I know. I wonder if it's like for small farms, like again, the small farmers could benefit from that. I don't know, like their tier of if they're going to be reaching those small farms.
do they even do business with?
Yeah.
I mean, like the scale that this company operates at. I actually had an opportunity when I was in Santa Fe teaching with MEA. They had some horses there and they had like real cowboys that knew about being good custodians of the range. And I learned all kinds of things. Did you know, Margaret, that if you have rangeland and you do not have ungulate grazing, so the ungulate can be either like a cow, it can be a goat, it can be a deer, it can be an elk. But if you don't have one of these critters wandering around, so what the critter does is it eats the grass and then digests it and then poops. And then with its hooves, like sort of pounds it all down. So then the grass line becomes really vivid because of this. And they're like, you need a certain amount of animals out here or else the whole thing desertifies. And it's like, really? I thought like the animal makes the desert. No. The animal is what keeps the whole thing going. So by all this fencing and so there's no more deer, there's no more elk, there's no more like wild ungulate. So you need a domestic ungulate to cause this to happen.
My uncle used to be a cattle farmer, so he had a huge cattle ranch in South Carolina. But yeah, I mean, the farm, like agriculture, it's a closed system. So you're having to create a closed ecosystem. Then you need someone to mow the lawn, the goat. You need to do manure, the cows. Like you need all those things in place for there to not be like a break in the chain.
That's right.
So like when we talk about like conventional livestock, which is where McDonald's is getting most of its meat, like that's why you need antibiotics and all these other things. Like there's just the cow.
Yeah.
Not in this other ecosystem that like everything's working together. So yeah, this is promising. I feel like I read it as kind of just like a nice greenwashing appeal of like, yeah, regenerative agriculture. Like we'll jump on that train because it is like a hot button topic. I feel like I'm hearing more and more mainstream discussion around regenerative agriculture. And it is something that I feel like we should be working towards. And I would hope that larger companies would be serious about that. But only time will tell.
Just as a side data point here. My wife and I were like, well, we should eat pastured chicken, which is different from organic chicken. Like a pastured chicken actually like eats bugs and stuff and I don't know, like lives out in the world. Do you know how much a pastured chicken costs?
Oh, it is a hefty.
It's
It's over.
$70
Yep.
for a pastured chicken. I was like, whoa, what? Like, I can't do $70 for a chicken. I'm sorry. I just can't go there.
I know. I think that's why, like, always the conversation. People are like, oh, it's too expensive. But the piece with regenerative agriculture is then you're more consciously consuming meat and less of it, but you're still consuming meat because it's a part of, again, the cycle. You're just more consciously
Yeah.
consuming it. This conversation is always so fascinating to me because it's almost like we're trying to go back to the way that the world naturally was, but we're still trying to contain it within our industrial agricultural confinement, which
Yeah.
like they're not always super conducive. So eating local helps with that because you're supporting smaller farms and they kind of are managing that ecosystem. But doing it on a large scale, I'm not sure like really is feasible because it kind of works against the whole ethos of that. But let's get into our It's Not Too Late story for this week. We heard from Mary Ann, who I believe you, David, met a decade ago, or that's what she had said when she wrote in, when she was in the process of leaving academia to return to a modeling career with a clear mantra guiding her, which was to redefine beauty, we must redefine aging. So she wrote into us saying, since then, I've made significant strides in reshaping the face of the beauty and fashion industry, becoming the oldest model featured in Victoria's Secret's Love Cloud campaign and serving as the face of heritage brands like Estee Lauder and Clarins Paris. Along the way, I've had the honor of working alongside extraordinary creative teams and being photographed by legendary talents such as Mark Sellinger and Zoe Grossman. This is the second chapter of my life. It's been more than a career, it's a calling. Beyond the runway and campaigns, I now prioritize holding the door open for other women reclaiming their peace, power, and purpose. Through the alchemical tools of Kundalini yoga, breathwork, meditation, and mantra, I continue the work of expanding beauty into a deeper expression of authenticity and empowerment. This is the best part.
Awesome. Go, Mary Ann. Well done.
Love that she wrote in. If you have a story that you would like to share, please send them to us. We absolutely love reading them and sharing them on the podcast, in the newsletter, on our page. They're just awesome. They make us smile.
This week in the newsletter, we've got a profile of Rebecca Richardson, and she's the co-founder of a company called Druzy Fusion. And she got into this functional fungi business to increase cognition, immunity, and overall vitality. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to the AGEIST newsletter, ageist.com/newsletter. You get profiles like this and so much more straight to your inbox Thursdays and Sundays.
And like I said before, we want to hear from you. Share your story with us. Go to ageist.com/story to read more incredible longevity stories. What you're doing, whether it's hiking a mountain for the 90th time, the first time, we want you to share it with us. You might even get featured on this podcast or on our site.
That's right. Send us your story. That's it for this week. Thank you for joining us. Stay strong, stay vibrant. We'll see you next week.
Bye.